Welcome back. This is Shelly Ann Rothis, and this will be the next part for the chapter of The Nightmare I Couldn't Wake Up From. Let's get started. The next friend would be Brian, who is a huge part of why my nightmares became daymares. It was Brian who did the most cruel and despicable thing that has always been a huge personal boundary that will make me lose total respect for another person. I was friends with Brian during the time me and Mickey first broke up and during the second time we got back together. Well, it was the second time me and Mickey got back together when he raped me. I actually only wanted my friend Nina to know. Although I honestly didn't want anyone to know, just like my 2 previous rapes. Although I started to feel shame and guilt for not speaking up about it again. I began to remember all the criticism and judgments from most people I told several years later about my past 2 rapes. The most common reaction I received is that I am the reason more people end up getting sexually assaulted because I didn't report the first 2 rapes. Also, people who were my friends during that time, who I told several years later, treated me like they were hurt by me not entrusting them to help me through the traumatic experience. So I decided to give it a shot and tell the first friend I saw as a sister I never had. I honestly hoped that Nina wouldn't respond like my actual sister did after I was raped when I was 15 years old. I was extremely afraid to even tell Nina due to how I ended up getting mainly traumatized by how my sister responded to it. Yes, I also got punished for the rape that happened to me then as well. Anyways, I did tell Nina on the phone shortly after it happened. I was in the trauma zone and was hoping that Nina would handle it in the most effective way possible. Although she responded in an extreme amount of fear and shock when I told her on the phone. She told me to run. I told her that I am outside and he is still in my apartment. She told me to tell him that I can't be intimate with him anymore. I did that and Mickey ignored me and put his hand up my dress and grabbed my ass. I told Nina what happened, and she was even more pissed off and disgusted than I was at the time. Well, that is the trauma state where it's like you're in another world and can't find your way out of it. I know that throughout my life that we are taught often that if anyone comes to you and opens up to you about abuse, such as rape, you try and be supportive, remain calm, and also try to problem solve with that victim to help them come to the decision of what they feel will help them the most then and in the future. One of those things is to report it to the authorities immediately, knowing that the evidence won't be there after a certain amount of time. I honestly thought that is one thing that everyone is taught from a young age. But I know now that most people are not taught that way at all. I also learned why most victims don't report rape. My story is proof as for why that is. I will get back to Brian now. The other part is important to understanding the next part. After Mickey raped me, I stayed in that trauma state for at least a week. That trauma state is the part where the victim is trying to repress that traumatic experience that I highly doubt anyone with feelings would ever want to cope with in their life. I had the same trauma state after I was drugged and raped at 15 years old. During this trauma state, I remember trying my hardest to act like normal when I was around Brian. Although Brian is well experienced with women who have also gone through situations like mine. Brian ended up trying a way to get me to open up to him. He offered to do something fun with me one day, which was taking a ride in his father's truck and running some errands and then going to Dunkin' Donuts and getting a colada. I agreed and tried my hardest to act happy and excited about it. On our way to Walmart, he got a serious tone of voice with me and suggested that he knows something bad happened to me. I tried my hardest to deny it and act like he is worried about nothing. Well, he was right about his assumptions that Mickey had done something very unacceptable. I finally gave in and tried my hardest to say it as though it isn't a big deal. Brian became super upset knowing that he was right with what he was afraid was true. He yelled at me when I told him that I just want to work it out with Mickey. He said that is so wrong and I shouldn't even consider giving him another chance. He told me about another female friend who experienced this, and she gave that man another chance, only to get hurt twice as much more by giving him another chance. Well, I of course didn't want to admit that he is right because I didn't want to have to live with the fact that not only the first man I fell in love with, but the first person I ever felt love with ended up betraying me in a way that most would see as the most unacceptable and unforgivable type of abuse. Yes, I was mostly afraid of others knowing because I knew how people will judge me and criticize me for giving Mickey another chance after raping me. I knew I would be the biggest clown with a dunce cap on my head for the rest of my life if me and Mickey did stay together forever. Come on now. You know, this is the perfect love story one would be so proud to share with their family and friends. Brian actually handled the situation perfectly. As for how I'd honestly think people who are older than us would be more knowledgeable about. Although my teachings about sloppy, hypocritical ageism are very true. Actually, the most frightening people I've known in my life are in the age bracket known as elderly. These people made almost all those people who responded to my first two rapes negative, as though they handled it perfectly. Yes, these so-called knowledgeable and mature adults we raise our children to believe are the ones we should always look up to and respect can actually be the ones that should be the least respected role models on the face of this earth. I honestly feel sorry for their children or the children of their children if they turned out to be just like them. So I listened to Brian's suggestions he gave to me. The way he did it was also perfect as well. Unlike most people give advice and actually expect others to take their advice as gold. Well, as I teach, it's the victim's choice, and only the victim can decide what they think will work best for them in that situation. The way Brian did it was by giving me the positives and negatives as for options I could choose from. One would be if I report it, then I might get backfired on by Mickey or others. The other option would be to let go of Mickey and move on, which he knew would be extremely painful knowing I would have to go through the grievance process due to the fact that I loved Mickey. The other option is working it out with Mickey and just putting it behind me. Forgive him for raping me. The negative for that could be that Mickey would take that as a weakness and do more abusive things to me. Damn it! This was a very difficult decision, and I realized that Brian is correct. The only part I didn't believe is that others would use my traumatic experience to also get a thrill from harming me if I did choose to report the rape. So what made me come to my final decision as for the 3 options Brian gave to me? The God-honest truth is that I was so ashamed and humiliated that 2 people know that Mickey raped me. I honestly wish I could take back that one phone call and stay to myself until I came out of my obvious trauma zone. I decided to report because I hoped the humiliation would decrease if I had at least reported it. I, of course, would still feel ashamed and embarrassed around the 2 people who now knew what I wish was a dark secret that would go to the grave with me. I figured at least I'd only be a clown when they see me, but the dunce cap would be removed. The end result was I ended up experiencing 10 times more pain and suffering due to Brian being the light to the bomb that the Lexington gang members had been hoping for since I moved into this apartment complex. Yes, Brian also was approached by gang members before meeting me. He too realized that they were full of shit as well. The day I reported the rape, I honestly didn't want Brian to know about me doing this. I was not feeling like I could trust him with my secret. I don't know why I had this feeling, but it was true. Brian had seen me from his apartment window and saw that cop was outside with me. He came running outside and was hyper, asking me if I really want to do this. Almost like he knew the Lexington gang members would find out and would use my traumatic experience to harm me more. I was already confused and still in my trauma zone state. I already asked my fake friend Gloria to be there when I do report it. I only told Gloria after Brian, because that gut feeling about Brian was that he wouldn't keep it a secret. So I figured that I would rather be the first to tell Gloria, since I knew that this would turn into an enormous lie from the Lexington gossip shark twatters. Although I learned the hard way that Gloria is a big shark twatter herself. One day Brian got mad at me when I demanded the money he promised me for over a week. He ended up ending our friendship and decided to get revenge on me for being mad at him. He told me angrily that he's going to tell the gang members he knows wants to destroy me that I am lying about Mickey raping me and that I falsely reported him for it. I honestly was so fearful, and I was hoping that Brian would calm down and realize how much harm he will cause me by doing this. I was going outside in the front of the apartment complex, and I saw Brian outside with a group of people around the bench. I went into a dreamlike state where I felt like I was dead and already in a different world. It was like slow motion you'd see in those horror films to make it scarier for the viewers. Brian looked at me with a big smile of revenge satisfaction. This is when I knew for sure that my life was now going to be a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Most people would automatically believe that it was the rape that caused my daymares to begin, but they'd be absolutely incorrect. How is this so? It was these so-called respectable, mature people who are the scariest creatures in the horror film that caused the whole audience to jump out of their seats, screaming in fear. It was shortly after Brian lit the bomb for these terrifying creatures that they began planning to create more scenes that would cause an audience to urinate their pants from that extremely intense scene when that terrifying creature captures its victim. In my horror film, it is I that was captured and held hostage in my own home, where these terrifying creatures gave a bunch of shark twatters the biggest thrill of their life. I will now describe how Anita became one of my toxic friends. I actually wasn't harmed by the break in our friendship because I honestly haven't seen her as a close, valuable friend since last year, 2024, when she showed her true colors after I met her and let her stay with me when she and her kids were homeless. Anita was a very obvious fake person who made several lies throughout our entire relationship. Many of these lies involved her delusionally believing these lies are true. Due to me choosing to do the right thing, to this day, I will not reveal why. This is due to me not willing to cause an innocent person more harm by revealing something they entrusted me to not reveal to others. In retaliation, Anita did the most cruel and despicable thing by trying to reach out to the gang members she knows harmed me for over a year now. She did this by making up lies about me on social media. By the way, dumbass, your video should prove that you are a liar. You said I lied about your friend you allowed to live in your apartment with you and your children. You said that I am lying about his criminal record. You said he only has a driving without a license criminal record, but you showed the picture that came from the sexual offenders list. Most people believe lies, and I'm sure most bought your bullshit. Although if any of those people had at least 2 brain cells to rub together, would Google the name you posted and see for themselves that he is a child molester. Okay, now is for the questions I know most won't answer correctly. Question: if I had to choose between Mickey and Nina, Brian, Stella, Anita, Ulrich, Tahid, and Gloria, as for who I'd trust, who would I choose? Let's do the answers. Nina versus Mickey. Definitely Mickey. Why? Because Nina broke one of the most unforgivable boundaries. Nina tried to get me evicted and also tried to get me to lose my housing voucher. My unforgivable boundary is making false accusations that can harm someone's home or job. Nina also verbally abused me since the beginning of our relationship, which caused me to feel like I had to always tiptoe around her due to constant fear of her going off on me every single second. A huge abuse tactic Nina used to maintain power and control over our relationship was demanding that I do as she says. If I didn't, her abuse tactic was ending our friendship and blaming and shaming me for it. The difference between Mickey and Nina is that Mickey was big enough to admit what he did wrong and apologize to me for it. Nina never apologized for any of the harm or hurt she caused me. Brian versus Mickey? Definitely Mickey. Brian broke one of the biggest personal boundaries, which is using a person who entrusted you with a traumatic experience and using it against them to harm them more. Stella versus Mickey. I have to admit that they'd both be equal to each other. They both broke their promises to me that caused me great harm. They both abandoned me more than 2 times. They both ghosted me more than once. They both never gave me closure as for why they ended our relationship. The only thing Stella didn't do was associate or engage with the gang members like Mickey did. This was a hard one because I actually lost trust for Stella after she tried to steal money from me and lied about it. So there are things I'd trust Mickey over Stella and things I'd trust Stella over Mickey. The one thing both Mickey and Stella have in common is that they both apologized and took responsibility for the harm and hurt they caused me. Anita versus Mickey. I actually lost trust for Anita long before me and Mickey got back together for the last time. Now, I don't have any respect at all for her because she, like Brian, broke that same boundary of mine by using my traumatic experiences to cause me more harm. Ulrich versus Mickey. Definitely Ulrich, because Ulrich never broke any major personal boundaries of mine. He also never abandoned me. Although Ulrich did cause my traumatic experiences to be twice as harmful to me. He did this by verbally abusing me. He also, like Nina, believed that I needed to do as he says. What was the two abuse tactics that both Nina and Ulrich used on me? They both blamed me for the abuse that is happening to me. They both minimized the pain and suffering I have from this abuse. They both treated me like I am a burden, not a good friend, for sharing my painful emotions from the abuse that happened to me with them. Gloria versus Mickey. Definitely Mickey. I lost trust in Gloria when I knew she was feeding the gang members lies to others. Plus, like Nina, she tried to get me evicted and lose my housing voucher. I won't bother mentioning more about Gloria because she barely had any meaning to me as for our relationship. It wasn't really even a friendship to me. She was mainly an acquaintance. Tauheed versus Mickey. Definitely Tauheed. Because out of every single person involved in my nightmare, he is the only one who made the necessary changes after betraying me. Tauheed did this by being on my side completely, even over his aunt who was being regularly manipulated by Lexington gang members to believe their lies about me. Tauheed also is the only one who never once scorned me for sharing my feelings with him. Tauheed was the most supportive friend out of everyone else involved in this nightmare I can't wake up from. Tauheed is the most respectable person out of these people I just compared. Tauheed not only apologized for the hurt he caused me, but he made efforts to gain my forgiveness. None of the others I mentioned made any efforts to gain back my trust for them. I want to point out to everyone that I didn't mention the rape. Okay, now, I know everyone is wondering if there's anything I can't forgive Mickey for. Yes, there are certain things I can never forgive Mickey for. Are they the ultimate personal boundaries that would cause me to see him as a despicable, no-good piece of shit? No, because he didn't break my biggest boundaries, which is making false accusations that can cause someone harm to their home or job. The other one is using someone's personal information that they entrusted you with that can cause them more harm on top of their traumatic experience or experiences. So I will make the list of what I can't forgive Mickey for. He left me for a woman who lives in the same apartment complex as we do. Yes, the fact that this woman lives where most others knew me and Mickey were dating, which made this betrayal one of the most cruel acts that caused me extreme humiliation trauma. He left me for a woman who tried to destroy my home. I actually told Mickey that I would have rathered he left me for a 10-cent hooker over Margaret. Yes, him leaving me for a woman like this is highly more insulting than if he left me for a hooker he paid for. He engaged and enabled the Lexington gang members by being their biggest tool to achieve their goal to destroy me. You're probably wondering how I can even consider being in a relationship with someone after they did something that is unforgivable to me. Well, Actually, both my parents and sister have done certain things that are unforgivable to me, and I still associate with them. Now, I know what most people are going to say. I will blow the foghorn right now. Most people will say that since they are family, I need to forgive them. Nope. That to me is a part of domestic violence culture. That's not any different than the cultures that don't allow divorce. So, a man or a woman being abused in that marriage are forced to stay with that abusive partner. That's not any different than teaching that family is forever and that they are a need in our life. Abuse is abuse, and if the victim feels it won't have any benefits to their life, then it is their choice to leave that relationship without cultural beliefs that shame them for making a choice that benefits them. I see all relationships as equal when it comes to who I choose to continue associating with in my life. It should be each individual's choice as for who they want to be a part of their life, without judgment or pressures from outsiders based on some man-made beliefs that can actually harm that individual. I will now go over the abuse that I have been endured by the Lexington gang members since August 2023 to current year 2025. I will note that these terrifying creatures will not stop abusing me until I disappear and they are not able to find me. Unfortunately, due to my financial situation, I have to be patient until I am able to escape the Lexington gang members' abuse. I have been severely traumatized by these experiences and not only suffer from the abuse that is committed on me, but I have to be in this trauma zone every single day due to the fact that my home is where these gang members also reside. My home is a trauma zone that causes me severe anxiety, fear, PTSD symptoms, humiliation, and depression. The following is the abuse that I have endured from the Lexington gang members. I was raped by Mickey on August 15th, 2023. I was then regularly stalked and harassed, starting with Jessica. I was physically assaulted by Vernon Ashmore on August 21st, 2023. Vernon and Jessica had ganged up on me regularly by stalking and harassing me. I was getting regularly stalked and harassed by several tenants I didn't even know shortly after Vernon started to stalk and harass me. My first major traumatizing event was when the Lexington gang members got the landlord involved in their goal to destroy me. I was given a false eviction warning by Connie Brown on 12/20/2023. The gang members cultivated a plan to involve other tenants to sign a petition with lies they made up about me. I was spit on by Vernon Ashmore on August 21st, 2023. Although the authorities didn't do anything to help me with that and actually failed to do their job properly by taking that evidence and turning him in and getting justice for that crime that happened to me. That's just a side note. My first major traumatizing event was getting an eviction warning based on lies. Next, stalking and harassment became more intense due to the Lexington gang members' plan to involve several other tenants in their abuse plots for me. I had begun to struggle with my current career. I had even become physically sick and had to call in sick for work more than twice due to being regularly abused by Lexington gang members. On 12/17/2024, Gloria and Nina were the sidekick members for the Lexington gang members. They both set me up by lying to the landlord that I sent them both a postcard in the mail as an insult that they didn't know about, although I have evidence that they were both aware of this postcard and used it as a way to set me up to help the gang members achieve another extremely traumatic event. I was being stalked and harassed more frequently by many other tenants in the Lexington gang members after Nina and Gloria did this. They are both evil and devious snakes because they went out of their way to try and convince not only strangers, but also friends of mine to believe their abuse plot lies about me are true. I know this because they tried to get my friend Pat involved in this plot of abuse. Pat also witnessed them purposely approaching many tenants to spread their lies about me and try to get them involved in the abuse plot and try to destroy me. Luckily, Pat knows these two are no good two-faced snakes and defended me. Not only that, but Pat is the only friend who decided to stop associating with these snakes who are trying to harm me. She even ignored Gloria when she did encounter her. She told Nina, walking past her in the hallway, "I fucking hate you." This is when the landlord took her abuse thrills and contacted the housing authority in her sick and evil attempt to try and get them on her side. I received a phone call from the manager, Stacy, who threatened me that I will lose my housing voucher. Pat is the only person who is defending me regularly from the Lexington gang members. Pat also called the housing authority to scold them for engaging in the obvious abuse against me. She informed Stacy that I am in fact getting ganged up on. I now got to the point where it would be absolutely impossible to reside in my home. I won't have any peace of mind until I do disappear from the nightmare I can't wake up from. The stalking and harassment became more frequent again. I was physically assaulted by Marianne Sharkey on March 21st, 2025. Marianne Sharkey rammed Connie Ross's dog's carriage into my right ankle. I ended up having to take an ambulance to the hospital due to the pain getting worse. I left the hospital with crutches. I want to also point out that this occurred shortly after I gave Mickey his last chance with me. This was March 9th, 2025, when me and Mickey got back together for the last time. My only rule was that he couldn't associate with anyone who is a direct cause to try to destroy my home. Actually, the day Marianne assaulted me was when Mickey was about to consider leaving me again. I knew that Jessica was using her manipulation to try and get Mickey to return to the gang. This happened when Mickey went back to his apartment to get some clothes. Mickey actually was staying with me at my apartment as part of his effort to avoid the manipulation from the Lexington gang members in order to keep his promise to me this time. I will describe this in more detail. Mickey did ignore Jessica's manipulation and returned to me. During the time Mickey stayed with me, another effort he made was by not responding to phone calls or text messages from Jessica. Although it was this one day that I had the next dreamlike state and had this god-awful physical pain that I knew this was in fact me and Mickey's last day together. This was on April 25th, 2025. When I was taking a nap, Mickey decided to go back to his place to do something. I woke up like I was waking up from a nightmare. Another unbelievable experience was I actually was having a nightmare about Mickey betraying and deceiving me again when I was woken up by him opening my door to go back to his apartment. I still remember this happening like it was just yesterday. Mickey saw me and told me that he will be right back. I honestly didn't believe him when he said that to me. When I woke up, Mickey had been gone for over 2 hours already. So I knew that Jessica had managed to manipulate Mickey with lies to return him against me again. I decided that this time I'm going to defend myself and tell these two off for doing this abuse to me again. I had it and was sticking to the rule I gave Mickey from the very start. This rule was extremely important because if he didn't follow it, he and I both knew that he would be putting my life in great danger again, which he chose to do again to me. This was my last straw with Mickey. I went to Mickey's apartment to express myself to him. Jessica, as usual, walked in on us when she realized I was there. Jessica started her abuse tactic of whining, crying, and lying. This is what I've described as the pity party that abusers use to try and fool their victims and others to become shark trotters. I called Jessica out on every single lie she tried to use to manipulate both me and Mickey to believe that I am the bad person. It worked on Mickey, but not on me. I realized that he is weak and is being psychologically abused by Jessica. This is an obvious norm in Mickey's life long before I came into the picture. Even several others realized that Mickey is obviously trapped in toxic relationships that he believes he needs to keep in his life. I now understand what Nina meant when she told me that these people obviously have something over Mickey that he always chooses to return to these toxic people over those who actually do care and respect him. I'd like to pause here because one important thing I learned was that Mickey is in the beginning stages of having dementia during his last chance to be with me. Not only I recognized something is wrong with Mickey, but several others also noticed that Mickey has a problem. Even professionals realize that Mickey has beginning stages of dementia. I have a few friends and also a couple professionals who personally experienced having a loved one who had dementia. My friend Carla explained to me one huge reason why Mickey keeps breaking his promise to never hurt me again by not associating with these gang members who are trying to destroy me. Carla and a few other people explained that people with dementia are easily manipulated by others, especially if they see that person as a need in their life. In Mickey's case, he feels the need to keep not only Jessica in his life, but also Margaret. Why is this? Most will automatically assume this is because he is actually happy with those relationships, but they'd be very incorrect. Mickey has opened up to me about both Jessica and Margaret's abuse on him. He told me that Jessica has stolen money from him. He told me that he never saw Margaret as his girlfriend. He said the only thing that he could benefit from having that relationship is that Margaret's grandson promised Mickey that if he ever becomes homeless, that he is allowed to live with him. He also said that he is afraid that he will have to return to being cared for by certain family members who live out of the state. Since he has no one else that will take care of him if he is ever unable to, he feels like he has no other choice but to keep these toxic relationships. My friends Carla and Sue explained that most people by a certain age are fearful of when they will be unable to care for themselves Due to aging and common mental and physical disabilities, many people will suffer from in older age groups, especially if the only people willing to take care of them will make this part of their life twice as miserable and torturous. In Mickey's case, he obviously feels that these certain family members will be more abusive than Jessica and Margaret. Why? I have no idea. But based on the short conversations when Mickey opened up to me about certain family members, he seemed scared to even talk about them with me. I now understand one main reason why Mickey deceived and betrayed me more than once now. This is a huge part that is necessary for my healing and grievance process with Mickey. Actually, it is the one thing I had hoped that Mickey would tell me someday. The last words Mickey told me in the previous breakup to the last one is that maybe someday he will tell me why he chose to harm me. I honestly don't have ill thoughts that involve Mickey's suffering. I honestly hope that someday Mickey will also be able to escape his nightmare that he can't wake up from. The stalking and harassment immediately began the day after this. Actually, the first two to start the stalking and harassment were Jessica and Mickey. I saw Mickey's physical and facial gestures while being led by Jessica on a leash. He obviously knows what he is doing is wrong, and he is ashamed and feels guilty. In the recent incident, Mickey paused to look at me. Jessica ended up becoming furious out of fear that Mickey will consider trying to come back to me again. Jessica was yelling and arguing with Mickey in the middle of the road at the Publix shopping plaza parking lot while stalking and harassing me. She gave me the middle finger before taking off in her car. My friend Ulrich was with me when this happened, although he only witnessed the first part of this stalking and harassment. That's due to his basketball game being more important to him than my safety. I actually asked Ulrich to please watch in case something happens. Ulrich refused to and said he doesn't want to miss a moment of the basketball game. I knew then that my friendship with Ulrich was not real and never was. What kind of person would put a sports game over a person they claim to care about when that person's life is being harmed? That's not any different than sitting there continuing to watch TV while someone you care about is currently getting raped right in front of you. I was so humiliated that my friend saw this happening to me. Never mind the fact that he didn't give two shits about my feelings or safety during or after this abuse happened to me. Ulrich also yelled at me and blamed me for everything by trying to make me out like I am the bad friend. Well, he isn't any different than Nina when she watched me getting abused and didn't do anything to help me during or after it happened. So this is what actually caused me the most harm over the abuse itself. The abuse was actually nothing compared to how these so-called friends who claimed to care about me responded to the abuse that has been happening to me for over a year now. I will now give a recap as for what I hope to achieve by sharing the most dreadful and humiliating chapter of my entire personal documentary. My hope is that this can help victims or survivors of abuse by hopefully preventing more people from having to experience traumatic experiences that ended up being twice as worse than the abuse itself. My goal is to reach out to our society as a whole to hopefully inspire everyone to make personal changes to stop this vicious cycle of abuse that happens every single day to most victims or survivors of abuse. This tainted practice of self-centered, distorted relational habits is actually another part of the abuse cycle that has been purposely ignored due to the fact that it is an accepted cultural practice within our society as a whole. What is an example of this tainted cultural practice? This would be teaching society as a whole to always respect your elders. Why is this a dangerous practice? This practice excuses everyone who is above a certain age of that victim from the abuse they committed on them. Not any different than only excusing abuse when it happens by a family member. One example to prove this tainted cultural belief and practice is that the child molester I mentioned in the story is actually in his 70s. So should this man be looked up to as a respectable and trustworthy role model? I'm pretty certain almost everyone's answer to that is definitely no. Another example is that the abuse that happened to me can't be true since my abusers are older than me. Actually, most people took sides with my abusers due to this tainted cultural belief and practice, since all of the Lexington Club gang members are significantly older than I am. Even those in a profession that are required to be unbiased, took sides with the Lexington gang members and refused to help me. This includes the landlord, Connie, housing authority, corporate office of Lexington Club, and the Indian River County Sheriff's Department. Another goal I hope I achieve with this chapter is based upon personal boundaries in my teachings as for how vital it is to let the victim make their own decisions as for who they choose to have a relationship with or who they choose to forgive when a person breaks a man-made personal boundary. What is a man-made personal boundary? This is not any different than a man-made law. Man-made laws are what laws our society produces for everyone to follow as a whole. As a result, this minimizes other things that can actually cause more harm to someone than that man-made law. One example is the fact that every single person focused on the rape that happened to me. Yes, stalking and harassment is a crime, but due to the Indian River Sheriff's Department failure to follow a very important job ethic for their profession, the Lexington gang members were unable to continue committing this crime on me. Which job ethic is that? This is when a person puts their own personal beliefs and opinions into their job or career. One example to understand this would be when a person in the LGBTQ group is not treated equally by someone in a profession that requires them to be unbiased. One example is when Kim Davis refused to give a gay couple a marriage license. Yep, the Indian River Sheriff's Department has been doing the same exact thing to me since August 2023. They used their own personal beliefs or opinions as reasons for not helping me get the justice I deserve for the crimes that have been happening to me. They made up several lies that actually go against the state law based on stalking and harassment. It is due to their biased personal beliefs and opinions on this crime that actually caused me to be harmed more. That is a long story in itself. I'm actually considering just sharing the complaints I made to the Internal Affairs Department at the Indian River Sheriff's Department that were also ignored for over a year now. I will now discuss how man-made personal boundaries actually caused me more harm than the abuse itself. These man-made boundaries apply to every single person involved in the nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Actually, the therapy I invented, creative inspirational realization therapy, the chapter can actually be effective for this abuse that happened to me as well. I actually already have this chapter completed for my personal documentary known as The Dark Tunnel Without Any Escape. It applies because the therapy I invented is unlike any other therapy that is known for the mental health field. My therapy is focusing on what the person receiving this therapy decided to do in order to accomplish their main goal in the therapy process. My new chapter of The Nightmare I Couldn't Wake Up From proves that my therapy will be a savior for all victims or survivors of domestic violence. I'll ask everyone now, what is one main point I have been stating throughout this entire chapter? I will go back to one part of this chapter that I will answer in this question. I will now defend myself to what most people are going to think to say to me. Mind your own effing business. It is my choice who I choose to have relationships with. I shouldn't have to explain my choices to anybody unless I want to and choose to. All these people do things that others see as stupid and wrong. But like my situation, you are not me. And you don't know how you'd actually respond if you were me in my situation. Why? Because every relationship is different based on what I've learned from my relationship with Mickey. I will describe when one person handled my situation properly after Mickey raped me. This would be when Deputy Mooney had come to check up on me after I dropped the charges against Mickey for raping me. I remember this day like it was just yesterday. I was wearing this white long dress with pink flowers as a design pattern. Actually, this is one of the dresses that Jessica gave to me as a gift. Anyways, I was walking in the back of the apartment complex in the parking lot on the side where the one dumpster by itself is located. Deputy Mooney pulled up in his car to me and asked me how I'm doing. He also asked a question in a way of concern and without pressure or judgment towards me. He said, "So you dropped the rape charges?" I was honestly extremely embarrassed and ashamed when I saw Deputy Mooney. He could also sense I was feeling this way, so he answered it for me in a way that wouldn't make me feel like a complete fool or idiot. Also in an empathetic mannerism that could also make me turn it into a joke. He said, "You still love him?" I looked at him with a bright red face and jokingly said, "Shut up, you jerk," laughing after I said that. And I also told him, "I know what you're thinking." I know because I myself have been in his shoes many times, which also proves that nobody knows how they will respond in any situation that involves these man-made personal boundaries. Believe me, if I was in his shoes, I myself know I'd be greatly confused and think there's something wrong with that person based upon how I used to believe before I myself experienced this type of situation. It is indeed factual that it is not possible for one to know for sure how they will respond to a situation such as mine. I have proof based upon a previous situation that is the same as this one. I was raped at the age of 16 by my 25-year-old boyfriend. I immediately ran away from him and immediately decided to end our relationship and never speak to him ever again. Next way to prove that only the victim can decide what traumatized them or what caused them the most pain for that experience is also factual. I also forgave Albert like I forgave Mickey for raping me. I didn't personally view or see him as a horrible and despicable person like others did after that happened to me. The same applies to Mickey. I did, however, change my view on Mickey as a person when he enabled and engaged in the Lexington gang members' abuse on me. So there was only one reason I dropped the rape charges. This is due to the Lexington gang members starting to stalk and harass me when they gained their biggest tool, which was using this traumatic experience to harm me more. I was hoping that since Mickey had rejoined the gang, he would try to stop these gang members' abuse on me, since I did drop the rape charges on him. Although, I honestly only regret doing that now because of these man-made personal boundaries. Everyone, including the Indian River Sheriff's Department, either minimized, blamed me, shamed me, accused me of lying, took sides with the gang members, made excuses for laws being broken, cherry-picked the laws, and ignored my pleas for help during and after these crimes were committed on me. So if I had stuck with the man-made personal boundary that most people see as forbidden, unforgivable, and illegal, I would have not been traumatized and scarred twice as much due to these people who are involved, and the main reason I am suffering greatly due to their man-made personal boundaries, beliefs, opinions. Thank you for coming back for the next part of the nightmare I couldn't wake up from. This is for my personal documentary of The Dark Tunnel Without Any Escape. I hope I really help those who are also victims or survivors, whatever you may want to call yourself, with their own personal struggles from experiencing domestic violence. I hope I also help and inspire others as for how they respond to victims of or survivors of domestic violence. Thank you very much. I hope my book gets out there and everybody gets to see it, and I truly hope to make a difference to our society as a whole.